Welcome to the holiday edition of The Pulse, coming to you live from our studios here. We're also on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 421, Gold TV channel 144. We are JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, family of murdered 25-year-old nursing trainee struggles to come to terms with her demise after it was discovered a chief, with the help of a pastor, kidnapped, killed and secretly buried her. We have the latest as we hear from the mother of the victim.
So as for us to be able to know what they want, so that we can then go and produce what they want and give it to them.
And we're also paying attention to the fuel prices and transport fares as negotiations continue over possible negotiations on the prices. Fuel shortage may also be imminent. These are the reports we're getting. But we'll tell you from the perspective of the bulk oil storage company, BOST, which is fighting off the claims that there are some challenges with the supply of fuel in the country. We'll hear from the managing director of the company, Edwin Provincial, who I caught up with to discuss Ghana's critical infrastructure and how it's faring.
And I think when I came back and checked, we have about almost 40 days in private storage, plus the 13 days in BOST. So we are nowhere near running out.
Not at all.
Not at all. In the BOST system, we have some challenges.
We'll hear about those challenges shortly. And we are remembering, don't forget, Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. We'll hear from the Convention People's Party as they honor the memory of Ghana's first president, who's now been celebrated 50 years after his demise.
He also brought to light President John F. Kennedy's signature program.
We'll get the latest from the Convention People's Party. This is The Pulse with me, Blessed Sogah, is brought to you by Global Communities, Dignilu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember that this afternoon we're streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. You'll want to stay with us. It's always a pleasure serving you here on The Pulse. Please stay. You're welcome. We start off in the Central Region. Relatives of a 25-year-old trainee nurse are struggling to cope with the news of her death after learning she was kidnapped, killed and brutally killed and also buried secretly in parts of the Central Region. Now, police in Mankinsim in the Central Region have arrested a pastor who confessed to helping a chief of the area to kill Georgina Aso-Botri. Of course, the pastor led investigators to the site of the burial to exhume the body yesterday. Central Regional Correspondent Richard Kojinyako has been taking a look at that story and has the latest in this report.
Adame ba akukume ba asodie aso memfa hin me hia wa aso memfa hin me hia aso minnim o wadimawu ifabofo no wadimawu oke kosumamu aw obaha se tamo ya sunti oba be ye ya no triso ade oba ya obeda ma de echiye ye aduane de esu so me kwa yi asese atam na set me ba na tam na me ba so no ye aduane de esi wo okoba ya wo se mesika ayara ewurade so na ye ya ja esu na ye so se na brantie no onye ni papa.
Well, so mother of the victim there, joining me now is Richard Kojinyako, who's been following up on the story for us. Richard, quite a sad day for those in the Central Region and even beyond, for those of us who are getting to read about the story, but started all for us. Who's this lady in question who's now being subjected to this brutal murder?
So, Blessed, the lady is a prospective nurse trainee. He is not a nurse trainee, a prospective nurse trainee.
Prospective.
He
Okay.
traveled. She
Right.
traveled to Ankapo. Yeah, prospective. So she traveled to Ankapo to have some interview that would enable her get entry or gain entry to the nursing training college. Now it happened that the sister is the boyfriend of the pastor, who is now in police custody, who is a prime suspect now. And so the sister told her that, okay, when you go, my boyfriend says that he is around, and so go look for him. So after the interview, the deceased is alleged to have told a friend that, well, my sister's fiancé says that he is coming to pick me. And so that was the communication that ensued between the deceased and then another person who is not named in this conversation. So the lady went missing. For about 3 weeks, they were looking for this lady. And so posters were placed, notices were placed on social media and part of Mankesim to look for her. So in that process, the person in question, who the deceased told that, well, my sister's fiancé said he was coming to pick me, alerted the police. And so that is how the police got to know the pastor. And so upon some interrogation, the pastor admitted, according to what the police is telling us, admitted to committing that crime, but he said that he did not do it alone. He did it with a chief. And so he led the police to go to the chief's apartment where Aso had been killed, buried, and the body was almost decomposing. And so the police, with the help of other people, had to exhume the body from that particular apartment. And so that is all we do know about it. But this pastor, we do not know the name. The police are tight-lipped on it. They would not communicate anything about it. And so it's thrown the entire Mankesim town into some kind of mourning.
Yeah, I can imagine. But then are we getting a sense of who this traditional leader may be?
Come again.
Are we getting a sense of who the chief involved is?
Well, so we are told that he's a Tufuhin, a sub-chief around the Mankesim area, but we do not know where exactly he's chief of, but his apartment is where the body was exhumed. But he is also the president of the local traders association, and so the people around the Mankesim area know him very well. For the chief, they know him. But as to whether he has been apprehended, because once the person who confessed, the suspect in police custody, has confirmed that he aided him to orchestrate that act, I'm sure that the police will be will be after him.
What may be the reasons for this murder? At least the pastor has confirmed, but are we getting details as to why this young lady was murdered? Possibly, allegedly, as we're learning of.
So the details are not really coming. They are very sketchy because the police are tight-lipped on it. They are not communicating, or they are not breathing a word on it to any media organization. They have directed everybody to go to the headquarters to get access to the information. But there is a sexual activity that we are told by the police in the initial and the preliminary investigation that took place, that they had some sexual encounter with the deceased now. So that also may have played a part, but we do not know really what led to them kidnapping her in the first place, killing her, and then deciding to bury her secretly.
How about local authorities there and, of course, community leaders? What sense do you get from them? And when last did we record such an incident in the Mankesim area?
So we've been speaking with the assemblyman for the area, and he says that it doesn't occur frequently, but this year alone there have been 5 cases of such nature, and so he appealed to the IGP to ensure that a lot of police personnel are sent to that area to ensure that proper security is taken care of. When we spoke with the residents, some of them indicated that, well, they know that the security situation is not that good, and so they've informed their daughters and their sons that when they go out, they should not stay late outside. They should come home so that something of this nature wouldn't happen to them.
Anyway, Richard, will still keep our eyes on that story for you. But for those of you who haven't heard about that gruesome murder, 25-year-old prospective nursing trainee, as we're learning from Richard, has been murdered. We'll see what police investigations will further unravel. By talking about the police, the Inspector General of that service is this afternoon ending his tour of the Upper West region following the killing of some men there. Now, at least 7 men have either gone missing or have been found dead and their bodies mutilated. Police are providing some sort of clinical and psychological support to the families involved. But we can now get excerpts of that visit that was paid by the IGP to the Upper West recently.
We must first of all find out what the market wants. And in our case, the market that we serve are our masters. That is even more dangerous. It's not just any common market. Because we are public servants. And anytime the word servant is echoed, then they mean that there is a master. Because without a master, there could not be a servant. So we come to our masters to listen, so as for us to be able to know what they want, so that we can then go and produce what they want and give it to them. So this is the mentality we are using to change the face of policing in this country. So we've done a whole bunch of analysis, and interestingly, when we were talking about the number of police people and the patrol, we are introducing a new concept where we are deploying at major cities, about 140 of them across the country, including Goni. And the average of 30 police officers who patrol the stretches of road and boundaries and also show police visibility within the cities, so that we make life uncomfortable for the criminals. So before even you spoke, we have acted. And we were in the process of operationalizing it this month. But we saw that we are going to use a lot of motorbikes. And for the first time in the history of this country, we have police people who have been trained. And then beyond all the skills that they have acquired during their training, they know how to ride, they know how to swim, and they know how to drive. But the riding bit is such that we want them to improve it the more, because we will use more motorbikes, so as to avoid a situation where we start this massive project of deploying almost 4,000 police officers at these 140 locations across the country with motorbikes. And instantly you see one accident here, 2, 3, 4. It defeats the whole purpose of the exercise. And we don't want to make the mistake. So they are being retrained to perfect their skills, because these are people we took from nowhere with no background of riding, no background of swimming, no background of driving, and taking them through a process to become that as part of the overall training. It means that, fine, they have finished the overall training. Now we want to segregate their riding alone and make them very competent before we give them the bikes for them to be out there in the community.
Let's bring in Rafiq Salam, who's our Upper West regional correspondent now, monitoring some portions of that tour of the IGP, because we understand that he's also gone into some of the rural communities to have first-hand experience on the security challenges there. Rafiq, how successful or otherwise has been this exercise by the IGP? And kindly unmute for me, Rafiq, so I can get the point you're making.
Okay. The IGP visit to the Upper West region to a very large extent is very successful according to residents, because this is the first time that they have seen the IGP in the region moving from one district to the other. At least he has been able to tour all 11 district municipalities in the Upper West region within 24 hours, and even came back over during the wee hours of this morning. And so residents somehow they have been satisfied with his visit because they have interacted with him and they told him about their concerns and he promised tackling them.
Still on the residents, how are they feeling now, knowing that they've been giving some reassurances by the Ghana Police Service that some 4,000 men, as we just heard from the IGP, will be deployed across this country and not just in their communities?
That's welcome news for the people of the Upper West region, especially the one municipality. For them, they think that they are now feeling better than the nights before. And so, but what they expect from the IGP as part of his deployment of these police forces, they want them to be at the outskirts, the hinterland, where these suspected murders have been taking place, not at the heart of town. And so for them, yes, the IGP is doing very well, but I think that the deployment should not be done at these places where it is considered as a den of the suspected murderers.
The local authority, we've just seen in the image there, nodding to whatever it is that the IGP was saying. After that engagement, have we heard from the Wa Overlord and other traditional rulers in the community?
What they told IGP, even when he was present, was has to do with this issue of community volunteer groups. And there's also in the process of forming these groups. Remember, the Overlord last Saturday met the chiefs, divisional chiefs, and then sub-chiefs, and also all kingdoms, that's every priest in town, and then on the need for them or all the communities to look for these volunteer groups to at least complement the work of the police forces. And so that's what the Overlord is looking at, so that they can be community volunteers, so that they will complement the work of the police force.
Anyway, Rafiq would have to leave it here and see what will happen in the coming days. Rafiq Salama, Upper West regional correspondent. And now, remembering Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The Convention People's Party today held a brief ceremony in memory of Ghana's first president. But for those of you who are not really aware of his achievements, we can listen to some of the leadership and stalwarts of the CPP outline that to us.
Included a Soviet proposal in 1961 to mimic the Peace Corps concept. He also brought to light President John F. Kennedy's signature program aimed at helping developing nations achieve prosperity while fending off Soviet subversion. Mazov said one of the most amazing documents he came across in his search in America was a psychological study of Kwame Nkrumah, prepared by the CIA in 1962. The study said, as a thinker, Kwame Nkrumah is a highly original, imaginative, and creative individual. He possesses a remarkable gift of vision, which enables him to see over the mass or mess of intervening political problems and details to view and all but taste a harmoniously organized, free, and independent Africa, possessed of its own unique personality, which stands in equality before the rest of the world, accepted, honored, and respected. It continued, this vision is to Nkrumah ultimate reality, all other things, politics, economics, people, lesser goals, and ideas are less real, less important, transient, expendable. Whatever he does, whatever he achieves, whatever he thinks is subordinate to his ultimate goal. April 2022 marks the 50th anniversary of the death of Osajifo, the revolutionary leader of Ghanaian independence, a visionary, advocate of the Pan-African movement. As president, Dr. Nkrumah oversaw Ghana's rapid industrial development and invested in national educational facilities, which others today are trying to copy and emulate, but unfortunately are totally fumbling and messing up the educational system for our youth, the most important natural resource any country can have. Can anyone imagine Osajifo building an effective educational system without providing textbooks for the students to learn out of for 3 to 4 years? Unthinkable. But those who claim to be part of the founders of Ghana don't see anything wrong with it and don't see it as important. Perhaps their wards are schooling outside the shores of Ghana or attending private international schools in Ghana where they have textbooks to teach the students with.
And there's more to learn from the Nkrumah Memorial Day later tonight on the JoyNews channel, as we also bring you the story about the Council of State member Samuel Kudjeto, who wants members of parliament to put the nation's interests first, since no one will be spared if there's any unrest in the country. Member of the Council of State Samuel Kudjeto wants MPs on both sides to put their the national interest first, because the political parties will be negatively affected if the nation goes up in flames. Referencing the carnage after Nkrumah's overthrow in '66, the elderly statesman warned that repercussions will be there for all Ghanaians, and that will be there if there is an unrest in this country. He's been speaking to Raymond Akwa in an interview on Afro.
Well, this is what we should be attacking. It is to calling the attention of our MPs to appreciate that. That's why I say national interest. That it is not a question of MPP, NDC. You know, sometimes some people falsely believe that if you can bring this government down, then we will come into power. And I say, but then the problem you have created will hang on you. It will hang on you. So you can debate the things in parliament, you understand? You can discuss it in your committee meeting. Committee meeting, we don't debate. Okay. We discuss. Okay. We discuss the issues, and as I said, if you have facts which may be unknown to the other party, you bring it out, and then you can discuss. And when you discuss, then eventually you have a consensus of what you think should be done. And so, if we are not looking at things from the national interest, dangers are there, and the dangers are something that affects each one of us. Because I will tell you, when this 81 coup occurred, people have died from all the political sides, all the tribes.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So
regardless of where they come from.
Regardless, you don't know who is going to die and who is not going to die. You don't know. I'll tell you, 66, the coup, people were traveling at dawn, going to the airport to pick flight. The fighting at the flag server, people got killed. There was even a woman, was it a woman? Yes, I think, who was lying in bed at Kanda, and the bullet went through her stomach. The shooting, the bullet went through her stomach. What did she do? What party does it belong to?
I mean, I'm not sure she was even involved in politics anyway.
Exactly. Nobody even shot directly at him. But
the stray bullets
kill people. So when I see life like that, and that's why oftentimes I convince myself that I'm God's miracle child. That, why am I still alive? I say I have no business being alive. The kind of things that I have been through, I should have been killed long ago, shot somewhere.
And we save that, the prelude and the whole story for you when you catch us later tonight at 6 p.m. on Upfront with Raymond Akwa. He's sitting down with Samuel Kudjeto, a member of the Council of State. You want to make time to watch that. Now, back to business. The household name, BOST, of course, stands for the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company. It was incorporated in December 1993 as a private limited liability firm with the government of Ghana as its sole shareholder. However, hopes of making this state corporation the most viable strategic reserve for the country is far from realization. I'll tell you what, between 2019 and 2020 alone, the reports indicate that BOST made some combined losses of 400 million Ghana cedis. In what appears to be a leap forward this time round, BOST, for the very first time in 11 years, is recording some marginal gains, with reports indicating that the company recorded a total of some 168.8 million cedis for the first time as profits to the company. Well, I caught up with the managing director for the company, Edwin Provençal, and I started by asking him what is changing at BOST.
Would I
Provençal, thank you for talking to Joy News. The last 2 years of your tenure appears to be going well for you in recent times. You've received some commendations from the sector minister, Dr. Matthew Puku-Prempeh, who appears to be elated by some marginal gains you're doing here. At Bost, we're learning that, of course, in the last 10 years, you've turned the tide and you're beginning to make profits. Ordinarily, if you set up an organization, you would expect that some profits will come through, but this has not been the trajectory for Bost over the years.
Yeah.
How did you make this work in the first place?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to your listeners. This journey hasn't been smooth. It's been very rough. I mean, I got in here in 2019, but then I had some predecessors who had started some work from 2017. The picture in 2017 wasn't good at all. I mean, the company was on the verge of comatose, collapse. But yes, thanks to the various stakeholders, especially my board of directors, the staff, the various ministers who have come, and the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who reposed a lot of confidence in me. Yes, we have turned the tide around, and with reference to your question, how did we do it? I mean, it can take about 2-3 days conversation. But yes, we came in, analyzed the situation, assessed the situation, realized where the challenges were, and together with the staff and other stakeholders, we did a lot of stakeholder engagements, and then decided a direction for the company. The direction we chose was twofold. The first one was operational excellence, because we had lots of issues with regards to our operations. For example, if you looked at our revenue earning assets, it was hovering around 18%. All our barges were out of service. All our pipelines were out of service, 364 kilometers length of pipeline out of service. All our 4 barges, 1 tugboat, 1 floating dock was out of service. We had 3 out of 6 depots unfunctional, out of service. And then we have 15 out of 51 tanks also out of service. I mean, these are assets that earn us revenue, and all of these were out of service. So virtually we had 18% of our revenue assets in operation. That meant that 82% was out of service. If you also looked at the financial side, the liabilities on our heads was humongous. It was $624 million trade debt, $415 million legacy loans, CDs, legacy loans. Right. We had BDC claims on Bost, 37 million, and then $109 million capital CapEx liability on our heads. We also hadn't audited our accounts from 2015 to 2016. However, during that period, bonuses were paid, which that gets deeper more, because on what basis do you pay bonuses when you hadn't audited your accounts? Not only that, we had tax liability, a tax overhang on our heads, 47 million Ghana cedis. And then Bost margin, which was, everybody, I'm sure you'll talk about the Bost margin.
Yeah, we'll get there.
The Bost margin was voted in, as of 2011 was 3 pesos. That was when the last increment happened. And fast forward to 2019, it was still 3 pesos. The Bost margin had lost almost 80% of its value. And the Bost margin is earmarked to help operate and maintain the Bost infrastructure, as well as expand if there's excess. So that is, in a nutshell, that is the company that came to meet. We had a CapEx liability, a contingent liability in terms of cases, because we didn't have money. A lot of people had taken us to court. And if you quantify the worst case scenario in terms of the judgment debt, it was hovering around 161 million Ghana cedis.
In fact, the Auditor General is beginning to raise some concerns about some of these issues. We'll get into them shortly. But as of now, you're running at a profit of about, in absolute terms, over 160 million cedis.
Yes, as of 2021.
That's laudable, but for some experts as well, it's just a drop in the ocean. I mean,
based on our capacity.
Based on your capacity and what's happened, I mean, over the past few years. The State Interest and Governance Authority, Sogah, reported that you're making a combined loss of over 400 million cedis, and all of this is happening under your tenure, the first 2 years, I believe. So if you juxtapose that to the gains you're making now, we shouldn't be praising you for that. What's your take on it?
It depends on how you look at it. I mean, I came in 2019. 2019, we were coming from a huge loss from the previous year to 2019. 2020 is debatable. Now, I'll explain why it's debatable.
You're not accepting that it's partly your fault?
No, I'm taking full responsibility. I'm just saying that the financials are debatable. How you interpret the financials are debatable. Right. Because in 2020, if you go and look at the Sogah report, they reported that my profit after income tax was 1.9 million cedis. They reported that. However, there was a revaluation of our assets. There was a revaluation of our assets in 2020. And the accounting standards, IFRS, says that when you revaluate your assets and there is an appreciation, the difference between the book value and the appreciation has to be hit directly to your P&L as a cost. Is that monies that were paid out? Is that a real expenditure? It's not a real expenditure. It has nothing to do with the underlying business. What it does is it goes to increase my balance sheet. You know, the value, extra value goes to increase my balance sheet. But in terms of the underlying business, the business of BOST, a provision for deferred tax liabilities on the revalued assets cannot be used to gauge my performance. So I disagree completely. Yes, that 290 something million revaluation provision took BOST to a loss of 291 million Ghana cedis. But the people who understand financial statements know that that is a technicality.
And in fact, some experts go ahead to then downgrade your performance to minus 40+%. I'm sure that you've read all of these figures. What are you doing to correct that notion that, well, it's just a continuous case of inefficiency here at BOST?
I mean, rating me 40% based on what? If you pick a company that made losses of 456 million cedis in 2016, fast forward to 2021, that company is making 160 million Ghana cedis. You say 40%. That is ridiculous. If you pick a company that had operational expenditure of 538 million Ghana cedis in 2016, by 2021, where do you estimate that operational administrative expense should be? Where do you think? Should it go up or down with inflation and everything?
Well, it depends on what you do. It depends on a number of factors anyway.
So I'm asking, normally, all things being equal, if your administrative expenses in 2016 was 536 million Ghana cedis, fast forward to 2021, normally, should it go up or down?
It depends once more on the factors. So you would have to break down the factors.
It's okay. You don't want to answer that, but it's okay because I guess you are the one asking the questions. Now, in 2016, the administrative expenses was 538 million cedis. In 2021, it was 228. That is efficiency. Less than half of the administrative expenses in 2021. Would you rate that a 40% performance? No. In 2016, the badges were non-operational. My badge revenue was zero. In 2021, my badge revenue is almost 15 million cedis. Is that poor performance? It's not. In 2020 to 2021, I've almost doubled my trade revenue. You can't say that's poor performance. In 2011, In 2011-2012, the boss margin contribution to revenue was 50%. In 2021, my boss margin contribution to my total revenue is 34%.
But I guess if that's your interpretation of the figures.
No,
but in terms of the increment, we've had a jump from 6 to 9% in terms of the absolute. So so it's based on interpretation, isn't it? What
in 2011-2012, the dollar equivalent of the boss margin was 2 cents. 2 cents. In 2021, the dollar equivalent was less than 1 cent.
But if you, I'm not able to quote your sector minister on this at your annual meeting. He was then referring to the boss margin, and that's why we need to zoom into it at once. As part of the reasons why you are having the 80% of your assets which you claim were redundant having been revived. So if indeed you're saying the margins and the values of it were depreciating, Ghanaians would say, well, that's not true. We've had an increment from 6 to 9%, and part of the reasons why you're beginning to see results is because of these margins.
I don't dispute that fact at all. Without the boss margin, there was no way we could have fixed our assets. So I went to ask for 12 pesos, which was going to be an equivalent of the 2011 dollar amount, which was 2 cents. So when I went, I said, okay, Mr. Minister, kindly increase my margins to the dollar CD equivalent of 2 cents, which was going to be 12 pesos. He said, no, I'm going to give you 6 pesos. I said, okay, it will be inside. So I got the 2 pesos, I got the increase, the 100% increase, and then I used it judiciously. Now, don't forget that boss margins have been in place for a long time. I mean, subsequent administrations have had boss margins. So it didn't come only during my time. And that is why, if you want to compare, if you levelize the boss margin in dollar terms, you will see that in 2011-2012, it was hovering around 2 cents. As we speak today, the boss margin is not up to 2 cents. It's not up to 2 cents. So yes, it went up. Yes, it helped us fix all our badges. Yes, it helped us reduce our turnaround time from 4 hours to 1 hour 30 minutes. Yes, it helped us reduce our badge loading days from 7 days to 1 day. That's operational efficiency.
But there's a lot of kickback at that boss margin. The minister then announced that you are not going to revise the whole decision on the boss margin. But given the fact that we're moving into an era where, of course, Ghanaians are beginning to complain about the increment in fuel prices, some experts, including some of the stakeholders as well, the transport unions, have been calling for a reduction in the components in terms of the tax measures for petroleum pricing. COPEC, for instance, which is the consumer, the Chamber for Petroleum Consumers, COPEC Duncan Amwa, has expressed some sentiments about that consistent rise in the figures and a decision by the minister to keep the boss margin. And I just want to bring you excerpts of what he says. So he says that I totally disagree with the minister when he says that the margin will not be taking off, bearing in mind the very fact that the private BDCs also have depots where products are stored and they do not get any margin but operate leanly.
Excellent.
You're not being fair on the market.
Okay. That is what happens when you compare apples to oranges. I'll explain why. That will be your conclusion if you compare.
No, but these are his words, right?
I say if you compare, he's comparing apples to oranges. That's what I'm saying. So let's look at why the boss margin was put in place. So in 1993, when the company was set up, it came to light that, Accra Tema is where the business is. I mean, 75% of the business is in Accra Tema. But BOST has a social mandate to store, distribute, and transport petroleum products across the length and breadth of this country. So we are mandated to go and build tank farms, to go and put infrastructure for a social purpose, not for profit. Are you with me? And in the wisdom of the founders, thanks to Dr. Kobna Donko, and I mean whose shoulders and other shoulders on which I stand, they envisage the need for the boss margin so that we can use it to operate, maintain, and expand infrastructure. That is a social mandate. Does any of my BDC friends have any social mandate? They don't have any social mandate.
Yeah, but you share the same space with them, right?
Yes, I do, but they don't have a social mandate. So if you talk about taking away the boss margin, because the boss margin comes at a cost. That cost is a social cost. Are you with me?
Right.
So take away the boss. Don't just take away the boss margin. When you are preaching, take away boss margin. Also take away that social cost. Then you are being fair and comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. But you don't say, take away the boss margin, but boss should continue to manage the depots in Bolga, in Savelugu, in Buipe, in Akosombo, in Mamiwata. It's not fair.
Yeah, but the point is, these are strategic assets, you believe, which some of your competitors, I'm using that word for them, do not even have in the first place.
But all my competitors are putting their resources in the most profitable areas in the country, which is Accra Tema. Go to Accra Tema. You have a plethora of tank farms. Why are they not moving in? Nobody has stopped them from moving into the hinterlands because it's not going to be profitable. Private money does not do social projects, but boss is mandated to do these things, and they should come at a social cost, and that cost is the boss margin. You get what I mean? So if you leave it to me, a private sector person,
right,
I'm going to shut down all these other depots, and also
you would have.
I would have shut them down and also operate solely in Accra Tema to sweat my assets and milk the best out of the best I can out of those assets. But because the shareholder has given us a social mandate, we are mandated to operate in those areas. Are you with me? So it's not apples and oranges. Number two, BOS is a critical infrastructure entity. It's not just a profit-making entity. Profit is not our sole motive. We are a critical infrastructure entity. Go do your research and tell me which country has outsourced its petroleum security. None. Because it is so important. It can be used. You remember 1973, what happened in the US when OPEC decided that they were not going to sell to the US. So what happened in the US? So it will be very foolhardy to think that as a leader, you will pick your national assets and hand it over to the private sector, or your petroleum security and hand it over to the private sector. You know what that means? If you do that, that means that the day the private people are not happy with you, you know what they're going to do? They're going to shut down.
If indeed BOS was that strategic and critical infrastructure as you're describing it, this is the time to bring that leadership to bear, as some experts would say. The fact that ultimately we're in a time where, of course, we need you the most. Ghanaians are complaining about... yeah, so you do agree that indeed when Ghanaians say, let's take out the BOS margin, I guess it's because of that feeling that you're not living up to expectation.
Acknowledged. For 10 years, we've been making losses. It's a journey. I came in 2019. I still insist that 2020 on the underlying business, I made profit of 2 million.
But that's your personal opinion.
That's my, no, it's in the numbers. You can see.
But that's your
opinion.
It's
in the numbers. So you can decide not to see not to see the profit after income tax and just go to the overall profit, which is a $291 million loss. But there has been progress. That's the point I'm making. There's been serious progress. And it's a journey. Now that we've started making profit, we're going to use some of these profits to fix some of the assets. We still need a BOS margin to maintain the assets. As we start making more profits, then instead of paying dividend to the shareholder can tell us that, you know what? Instead of expanding your infrastructure to the areas where you do not have infrastructure, please use some of these monies to bring in extra cushion.
How about managing effectively?
Do you know that?
How about managing effectively?
Do you know that we used to have a strategic reserve levy? We used to have a strategic reserve levy purposely for what you were talking about, to make sure we buy in stock.
Right.
Since 2006, that levy has been zeroed out. So today, you and I, that levy is like the premium we pay to enjoy that insurance and that cover.
Yeah.
If you don't pay your premium, will you get insurance? No, you won't.
So that's where I'm coming from. The fact that now you're making profit.
Yeah.
Let's revise the bust margin, and then you make judicious use of the profits you're making.
Let's not confuse the two.
Right.
When you talk about providing the public with the comfort we need, that is the strategic reserve levy.
Right.
That has been zeroed out. You get what I mean? There were two levies. The bust margin, if you take it out, it will be almost impossible to manage the infrastructure, the whole of the infrastructure, and they may end up deteriorating again. So the bust margin, once bust gets to its peak, I can tell you that whatever gains we get will be used to expand our petroleum infrastructure.
Not the proceeds you're making now. Is that your argument?
No, it's virtually nothing. 160 million cities can't do anything. It can't do anything, I'm telling you, for bust. Yeah, in terms of the infrastructure we are managing, it can't do anything. 160 million, just $16 million.
Right.
One cargo is about $50-something million. $16 million is a drop in the ocean when you talk about bringing in petroleum products. It can't really do anything. But we have a job to do. We have to keep this infrastructure running, and it comes at a cost. When we do it very efficiently, there will be some surplus. That surplus, we can now decide to use it to expand the infrastructure, which is the minister's dream. His dream is that those extras that come, we should put it together and use it to expand the petroleum distribution infrastructure. But if he changes his mind and says that out of this margin, the dividend you're going to pay, use it to bring in extra products. We would use it to bring in extra products.
Are you not making Ghanaians pay for the sins of the past?
Not at all. I mean, I'm a Ghanaian. I feel the pinch. I buy fuel. My mother buys fuel. My late father is dead. But there are other people in my family who buy fuel. We feel the pinch. But this is the first time in 10 years that we have made profit. We can't solve.
Which you are describing as a drop in.
It's a drop in the ocean, but we can't solve all the problems overnight. It's a journey, and I agree with you when you say yes. Maybe we need to have a second national conversation. Boss is not a policy person. You get what I mean?
Right.
So we need to have a second national policy debate on how to fund the strategic reserves. Hopefully, we'll bring back the strategic reserve levy. Hopefully.
And that would obviously meet the displeasure
not necessarily
of stakeholders, because you've heard from the transport operators.
Not necessarily.
They're having too much. Transport fares, for instance.
Not necessarily.
Transport fares, for instance, are about to go up.
Not necessarily. Let me tell you what.
So you agree they are simply not happy about what's happening, just piling the debt more and more on them.
Let me tell you what's going to happen when BOT gets efficient. When BOT gets efficient, it means that the transportation of fuel products is going to be done with the most efficient and cheapest mode of transportation. Are you with me? So yes, the transportation cost on the price build-up, that is the UPPF and the PDM, it is possible for that to go down. Are you with me? But if a huge chunk of our transportation is being done using trucks, the cost will keep going up. So there's a wisdom in ensuring that BOT gets efficient. When BOT starts expanding its pipeline infrastructure, it means that over time, the cost of transportation using pipeline is like 60% that of on the road. It means that over time, the price at the pump can go down. Not only that, go and look at the price build-up and tell me which is the highest driver of petroleum prices. It is not a boss margin.
It doesn't matter. At least
It
we
does.
need
Boss
to start
margin was
from
reduced
somewhere.
from 9 pesos to 7 pesos. What did it do? It was reduced from 9 pesos to 7 pesos. What did it do? Go and check the forex. Go and check the forex portion on the boss margin. That is what is. Even though prices in the global market are going down, today as we speak in Ghana they are going up. And so you need to do proper analysis on the key drivers of petroleum pricing in Ghana.
But you
so
do
we
agree
can address
that looking at the time in which we find ourselves,
yes,
any possible revision in the price build-up will be highly appreciated by stakeholders.
I'm telling you, they took 2 pesos.
It's because the margin is feeding you significantly
they took
as
2
an agency, and that's why you seem to be positive about it.
We budgeted to do certain activities with 9 pesos. Overnight, to help cushion the taxpayers, 2 pesos was taken out. Go and check the other margin price contributors and find out how many were taken from all of them. So if you want to attack the boss margin, it will not be fair. What you want to do is to kill boss.
Where do you situate your social contract in all of this with the Ghanaian public?
Be specific.
Because you're saying that, well, this is the social cost to it. Have the margins paid, and then we get boss rate treated. However, Ghanaians are saying we can't share that cost with you now. Try and also bear with us. Allow that margin to go. Let the transport operators see a certain, ripple effect in the system, and then prices will eventually come down. You're not willing to share that cost with the Ghanaians. So where do you situate your social contract?
You will be killing your nose to spite your face. Seriously.
Really?
Yes, because in order for the petroleum distribution to happen efficiently and effectively, in order for the government's policy on price parity across the length and breadth of the country to be successful, you need bust infrastructure in various parts of the country.
You're talking about expansion. But
not expansion.
Yeah,
you need the existing infrastructure to work. And I'm telling you that as at 2019, the existing infrastructure was almost comatose.
The minister says you have 15 running now, I guess? 15 out of...
we had 15 out of 51 faulty. Now we have 12 running.
So we
need to repair 3. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That it is the boss margin that has enabled us to get to where we are. We are not at peak. This 160 million cedis you're talking about is profit. It's not cash flow.
Right.
Let me explain to you.
Okay.
When you issue an invoice, it is a sale. But until you collect the money, it is not cash flow. As I speak to you, the boss margin that NPA and Co is helping us collect, I can tell you that there's a lot of that profit in outstanding boss margins. So it's not cash. It is profit, but not cash. Now, we have other projects to do. There are projects we need to do. There are maintenance projects we need to do. There are contracts we signed, and there are maintenance loans we've taken that we need to service. So just because boss has become the light somewhere does not mean that all these things should go away. It will not be fair to you and me, because eventually all the gains will be reversed.
I see how hard you're trying to refrain from attacking stakeholders who feel you don't deserve the margin.
I would have done the same.
Right.
I would have done the same. But I remember very well, I used to work in Ghana Telecom. I remember how eventually Ghana Telecom was brought to its knees. Right. Eventually, we had to bring in a strategic investor. As I speak to you, that strategic investor is preparing to leave the shores of Ghana. Right. So if we can get government organizations running efficiently for the purpose for which they were set up, it will benefit you, it would benefit me, it would benefit posterity.
Indeed, and if we were to do that, then of course we should be focused on not just shoring up revenue, but of course trying to ensure that there's efficiency even from within. Yes. The Auditor General, for instance, is beginning to raise some concerns. We'll get into that. Yes. But let's first of all deal with where you are now as boss. Storage is obviously one of your key functions. Where are we now? Because there are reports out there that there's an imminent shortage. Is that an accurate
No, it's
description?
not accurate. It's not accurate at all. In the boss system, so we have tank farms across the length and breadth of the country. And I think this morning I was referring to BOST having 13 days of storage. I meant within the BOST system. It excluded the tank farms, the products in private storage. And I think when I came back and checked, we have about almost 40 days in private storage, plus the 13 days in BOST. So we are nowhere near running out.
Not at all.
Not at all. In the BOST system, we have some challenges. Now, BOST used to have open credits until it was abused with suppliers, and that's what led to our $624 million debt. So today, nobody is willing to have an open credit arrangement with BOST. So what we do is, in 2018, we brought in one cargo, one ship, 2018. In 2019, as I talk to you, we brought in almost 8. Today, as I speak to you, we brought in almost 12 cargoes. So it is a trajectory. And how did we do that? In 2018, no bank was willing to give us any instrument to do anything. But because we had won the confidence of the market today, banks are willing. Our LC limits have increased, but not to the level at which we expect. Also, because prices have gone up, whatever LCs we have today can only bring half the quantity of products we can bring. So today, within the BOST system, we have only about 13 days. But then outside the BOST system, the private depots, etc., I'm sure there's a lot of fuel available, that shortage is not imminent.
And of course, thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. There's more from the MD of BOST as we delve into the matters relating to the Attorney General, which is questioning some financial infractions there at BOST, including some dubious awards of contracts to officials and some 3 companies. We'll talk about that with Edwin Provenchal right after this. What was the notion behind the investment in the first place? Because I'm sure that I'm sure that by now.
I don't know. I wasn't here.
Yeah, but that's not a fair answer to give.
I'm telling you honestly that investments have been made.
You have your handing over notes, don't you?
Why would you say that?
Yeah, so. Is it the case that you're working in tandem with some of these private depots that you're talking about?
Yes, some of them store with me.
Okay.
I also store with some of them, sometimes. So it's an industry, and we need to work together to ensure the sanctity of the industry.
Obviously, we're finding ourselves out of a pandemic. We're not fully out of the woods, as the experts are telling us, but the effects of the global pandemic, COVID-19, and much more recently, the Russian-Ukraine war has posed a lot of challenges to many sectors, including your sector as well.
Yes.
How is that telling on the BOST story?
Yes. Had it not been the pandemic, which had its cascading effects in terms of, and then the Ukraine war, which led to supply chain disruptions, etc., etc. And it's all about demand and supply. And if the demand is more than the supply, prices go up. And then the sanctions on Russia, which also affected a lot of things. The net impact on BOST is that supply inflation. So prices went up drastically. And also there was a supply of logistics bottleneck. It means that the cost of logistics also went up. And so it was very expensive to bring in products.
Right.
And woe betide you if you brought in products and because of the depreciation of the cedi, the next day the dollar goes up, then what's going to happen is that you need to go and you sell in cedis. And when you finish selling, you can't bring in the same quantity of products. So that's that's the impact. So the volumes we plan on bringing, we were very bullish. We haven't been able to bring those volumes.
Right.
Until we get maybe double our LC limits. So I think it's a market issue, but I'm happy to know that the Bank of Ghana, through the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Energy, is supporting to have access to Forex, but the risk still remains.
So in the long term, or at least medium, what measures, concrete ones, do you intend to put in place to check that?
I think this is where I would say Ghana is very lucky to have the Minister of Energy, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh. I know on a policy level he's working towards three main alternatives to ensure that petroleum security is guaranteed. Previously, some years back in the early 2000s, we used to have relationships with other national oil companies who gave us open credit. I know he's working to try and open that channel again. I also know that he's working hard to even get some of the international oil companies to, instead of storing their products far away, bring the products in time to come and store their products within BOST so that they can sell the products to the BDCs here, and then we know that there's fuel in our tanks. Right. I also know that he's working round the clock to ensure that TOR becomes operational, because when TOR becomes operational, for gasoline, will be covered.
So that will complement.
So that will complement our stocks in our. So I can't say for sure which one will materialize quickly, but I know he's firmly working on it, and I wouldn't be surprised if within the next few weeks or months he will come up with an announcement.
So, if we have TOR running, and they're complementing your effort, yeah. What would be that end game? I mean, and the impact on the average citizen out there?
Oh, it will be tremendous, because TOR will sell in cities. The forex benefit alone will be tremendous. TOR will refine, sell to us in cities. We'll collect the money in cities and pay TOR. The demand on the dollar will go down. It will help curb the depreciation of the cedi. We'll have product availability across the length and breadth of this country, and even have some to export to Mali and our neighboring countries, where we collect dollars. So when TOR is working, the total effect on the economy will be immense, even though they'll be producing less than their capacity, but it will help curb the demand of forex to bring in.
Since you're talking about some emerging markets for you, like Mali, the sector minister was lauding you for such an initiative. Yes. What's that story for many of who are out there who may not know what it is that you're doing out there?
Excellent. So, as an economist, one of the key drivers of GDP is trade, especially exports. If you look at the re-export volumes in Singapore, you will be amazed. And I think Ghana is in a situation where we can leverage the same opportunity to grow our non-traditional exports. You get what I mean?
Right.
So we have a depot in Sogah, and that depot was meant for exports in the wisdom of the founders. So once we brought that depot up and got it running, we went out there to start looking for customers, because some of them used to drive all the way to Accra. They mess up our roads, increasing our road maintenance costs. So if you have a depot in Sogah, why would they traverse 900 kilometers? Almost 500 kilometers almost 1,000 kilometers to come and lift fuel and then continue to their country. So we went out there, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Fortunately, we were able to get some customers in Mali. And for 2021, which was when we did a lot of exports, Mali's imports from Ghana increased from 0.1% to 6%. That is tremendous. And they pay in dollars, cash. So that is a huge potential for this country, that we can leverage this BOST system to export a lot to the hinterlands, depending on our appetite for trade. You know, as we speak, NPA, our partners, we are engaging them, we are engaging the ministry to try and align the export protocols across the coast. Because today, our protocol is quite challenging,
right,
that it acts as a non-tariff barrier, sort of. So we hope that we will resolve that quickly so that the exports will be very smooth, and that would inure to our benefit in terms of forex inflows.
And in fact, Gutta, I recall engaging the president, Dr. Joseph Obing, some weeks back, raising concerns about what's happening in the petroleum sector, the fact that the juiciest parts are being controlled by expatriates. It's part of their concerns. And since you're talking about forex, they believe it's eventually adding up to the problem. Do you share the same concern? I mean, and do you feel it's part of the reasons why we're not moving forward, if I could use that?
It's not only the petroleum industry. Look at telecoms. The significant market power is owned by a foreign company. So at the end of the year, what happens when they make huge margins? They have to change cedis to dollars. There's pressure on our cedi so it's a whole cycle every year. Yes, a heavily import-dependent country. I can tell you that I'm happy about this 1D1F because hopefully it's going to substitute a lot of the products that we import. So all these things eventually will help, including focusing on the bust export potential as well. And so, yes, I agree with him. It's an import-dependent economy.
Yeah.
But guess what? I think lately we are having net exports. But net exports due to what? You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Due to what? Is it oil that's causing the net exports, or is it real production? I mean, industrialization that's causing the net exports. When you delve deep in there, you can now really understand the micro elements of the industry. But the potential is huge. I mean, look up there. I mean, look at where Ghana is. Look at Sogah, and we have a 40 million tank farm there. It can serve Burkina very well. It can serve Mali very well. Once we take out these frustrations some of these guys have when they come here. So the potential is huge. And we can also leverage on the African Free Trade Continental Agreement to make serious inroads. So look at BOST as a national asset. And national assets, once they get working efficiently, private sector will gallop.
So let's talk about that assets now, shall we? And some of the issues emerging from the Auditor General's report. He's, of course, raising so many questions about where you're investing, where you're putting monies, and also some procurement matters as well. So let's get to it. For instance, the issue about the 3 companies that was awarded a contract of some 178,000 and over Ghana cedis. The understanding is that it's not, if indeed you look at the procedure, you've not been fair in terms of the laws on competition and how you should go about this whole procurement issue. What's the perspective of BOST on some of these findings by the Auditor General? The fact that you have one individual creating 3 companies, awarding eventually the contract to the same ownership, really. So I'm sure you've read that report.
Yes,
what's your reaction to it?
I mean, I want to say it's a human institution. That's first. I want to say it's a human institution. I also want to say that we do thousands of procurements every year. Thousands of procurements every year. And because it's a human institution, yes, obviously, you will have some of these things happening. I think the focus should be, yes, it's happened. It shouldn't have happened. Then we go back and find out why and how did it happen.
Right.
There are people who are responsible for the procurement. There are people who work on the evaluations. These people have been queried, and they're going through disciplinary procedure. We have also tightened the procurement process so that these things cannot escape anymore. But as a human institution, once in a while these things will happen. So yes, I'm guilty because I'm the head of entity, I'm the institutional head, but I can promise Ghanaians that we are putting in place measures for this not to recur.
Yeah, but normally that's what we hear from all the managers of the various public institutions. You take responsibility for whatever happens, but we are not able to identify, and that's the concern of some, those really involved. What measures, specific measures are you taking them through?
Today,
right.
As we speak, there's a disciplinary process ongoing. I can't judge before the process is over. So once the process is over and they are found culpable, they will be dealt with according to...
How many of your officers have been indicted as a result of that?
They don't need to be indicted. They haven't been indicted, but those who work on this, we know. And so they're going through a disciplinary process, and once it's over, in a collective bargaining agreement, there are punishments.
Some say the Auditor General's findings carry a lot of weight, because looking at how meticulous the process of auditing is, he cannot be making a mistake here.
I never said he was making a mistake. I said, yes, it happened. So the finding is true. I'm saying that you don't punish. You need to unearth how it happened so that you put in place processes and procedures so it will not recur. In that finding, I'm saying that there's a disciplinary process also ongoing to ensure that those who were involved and are culpable get the right.
The report is indicting enough, isn't it? If you obviously know the owner of the Unity, Ujima, Co-Pressures,
that company has been blacklisted from doing business with Bost.
The three companies.
All of them have been blacklisted.
But you know the owner.
I don't know the owner. I mean,
but you know your officers who may have dealt with them.
That's what I'm saying. That yes, you just don't get up and bring the hammer. You have to go through a process. You are innocent until proven guilty. That is equity.
Are you not being lenient in this case?
No. Because once that committee report comes out, the punishment will be clear in there based on a fair process. So we need to go through, there's a union here. So you have to go through the agreed union process to arrive at the conclusion.
If you look at how financial malfeasance is eating deep into the public sector, 17 million plus as the auditor, billion plus as the Auditor General is reporting, you wouldn't want to go through another process in simply trying to ask questions which have been answered in the report.
No, it never brought out who and who were responsible on the evaluation. That's not what the audit does. The audit finds an infraction and advises management. It's up to management to use its internal processes to cure the infraction and also where there are lapses to discipline those who are culpable. That process is ongoing, and when it ends, I shall call you back and tell you what's happened to those people.
How about the monies involved? How do you intend to, for instance, liaise with...
The service was delivered.
Right.
No, the service was delivered.
So it's not really a problem to you?
No, it's not. The service was delivered and signed off. It's just that the process leading to the selection was flawed. But no money has been lost.
So regardless of how inappropriate the processes may be, you don't have any problems with that? The fact that the service was delivered, it's fine?
No, that's why we're going through the disciplinary process. That's why I said I raised my hand. I take full responsibility. And there are people who work on these things. There are general managers, there are officers, and we know them. And they're going through the process. So they will be dealt with. Now, we've also identified process failures that we have corrected with our internal audit. So the issues like this hopefully will not recur.
How are you reforming that? For instance, in terms of the processes as you're talking about.
As I speak to you, before any document comes to me, there are checklists. We have a whole list of checklists at the procurement end. We have a second checklist at the internal auditors end, and we had a third checklist during the contract period, contracting process. So I doubt that within these three checklists, anything can slip through. But you see, as a human institution, you can only improve. So as people find innovative ways to go around the process, the auditor will find out, they will feed us back, and we tighten the process. And that's, it's a human institution, that's what's going to happen. But guess what? We've done huge procurements. If you look at the infractions from 2018, 2019, 2020, they're all going down. So it's a journey, and we'll get there.
But this is not 178,000. You agree is a significant amount of money. It's not about what else you do. It's about the specific.
I'm saying that we do procurements worth millions of dollars.
Yes.
You get what I mean? So it's not about the amount. It's the fact that the system was not able to detect this. It's not about the amount at all. The amount in the scheme of things, $17,000.
If you have that happening 10 times or more within the same structure, we're not sure of the ones the Auditor General may have not found out.
Oh, they would have found out. Don't worry. Auditor General goes around, people give them papers, they would have found out. But it's a journey.
Right.
It's a journey. I mean, Rome wasn't built in one day. We're coming from a loss of 456 million, 160 million profit. It's a journey. We're coming from an era where we didn't have internal auditor was a dumping ground for staff who were not wanted.
Right.
So today, where we have an independent internal auditor who queries everybody if they don't are not happy with anything. We are coming from an era where, I mean, we didn't have policies and procedures. Now we have 15 new policies and procedures. You're coming to ask me about the investments where we invested. The investment was done in before I got here. And then, the financial crisis happened in Ghana. The banking crisis.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. But on this one, you're assuring us that, well, the Auditor General may have found out more if indeed that was what was happening all over.
If that was
but then for these three companies, the Unity, Precious, they've been blacklisted. Yes. Have you taken further initiatives to, of course, try and sort the opinion of the Attorney General? That's government's official advice. What are they telling you, and what do you intend to do in terms of possible criminal prosecutions? I don't know if that would apply because I mean, it's a matter of the law.
If you get your management reports, there are some recommendations from the Auditor General. When you cure the recommendations, you need to write back to the Auditor General and let the Auditor General know that these findings, these recommendations, this is what you have done. We have done all of that, and we have communicated to the Auditor General. So I doubt that next year this will show up.
But I'm asking about whether or not you sought the opinion of the Attorney General on this, because this has got to do with procurement. Perhaps there may be an opening in the law to try and go after these three companies that are identified.
I don't think there's anything wrong in somebody setting up three companies. There's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong was our internal procedure that didn't detect that. But nothing stops you from owning three companies who do similar things. For obvious reasons, you know why you set up those three companies. Maybe one works in Nigeria, and you want to do some work in Nigeria, you want to do some work in Ghana, and you want some other one to do some work somewhere. So there's nothing wrong at the supplier side. You get what I mean? There's everything wrong when our internal process did not do the due diligence to detect that it is one person.
Yes, and so that's clearly a basis for which you could obviously seek the Attorney General's advice on what should be done to, for instance, your officials. There is the aspect of influence peddling. A lot of issues may come out of just these very transactions. Taking them through your internal measures, your agreement may not be exhausted.
That is what the CBA says. The CBA is clear upon infractions, internal infractions, the procedure that has to be taken. If you don't take those procedures and you go above it to court or wherever, the court will refer you back to your CBA.
A matter of procurement as well is involved here.
Yes, but we are curing that.
Yes, so that's why I'm saying that there could be an aspect of influence peddling, even by some of your officials.
We will only know the truth after the internal process is done. So once the internal process is done, and it is verified that there was influence peddling somewhere, or it is verified there was connivance between a wrongdoing was done, then we can go to the next level.
You're clearly being a judge in your own courts, isn't it?
No.
Expose that to the other agencies and let them clear you and your system of any.
I have a disciplinary procedure in-house. I cannot jump that and go to other agencies, because when you do that, the agencies will refer you back to your collective bargaining agreement with your union, because there are clear directions and directives and clauses and policies on what to do. Even when somebody steals, you can't just fire. When they steal, there is a process in the CBA you have to follow through before you get rid of them. That is what we are doing.
As MD, personally, did you take interest in knowing the names behind these three companies, questionable ones, of course, which you've blacklisted, as you're telling.
It's there. The company names. I don't have them offhand.
Right.
If I pull my report, they're there.
The names behind them.
Yes, the names behind them. There's one owner.
You haven't found time to try and see
You
if they
wanna
have,
find the owner?
if indeed they have any connections to any of your officials, or these may be politically exposed persons,
MD,
right?
I set up a committee to do that work. And
Why are you leaving all of that to your? Because in the
Because that is
end,
the
it may come to your
structure.
table. You
That
agree.
is the
You will
structure.
take the flag for it. You will be accused of all the wrongdoings here at BOC.
But I follow structure. I follow rules. I follow the law. This is what the law says in Boston, and we are following it. I'm not going to go over and above the law to do something that would eventually negate the whole process, because we will not have been fair to something management has signed to.
And it's just not about this investment. There's also the 1.19 million, which is being locked up in some other organization. Yes, but also we'll talk about that. But the Auditor General is, for instance, questioning how you go about expending monies. They believe that there are clearly no laws in terms of where you can put your funds or where you want to invest.
Yeah.
But then if you look at the sums of money that you continue to pay as a result of some of these investments, such as the one we're learning of the 19 million, it appears that you need some reforms, don't you?
Yes, I agree. I mean, this was a finding from the Auditor General. This happened not in my tenure.
Right. In terms of the 19 million?
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't invest that money. But I take responsibility because I inherited both assets and liabilities of the company. So I'm not going to pass the blame. So I take responsibility. The institutions in which these investments were made at a point in time were institutions that have been passed by the Bank of Ghana, who regulates the financial system, and by the Securities and Exchange Commission, who are passed those institutions as sound for the public to invest in.
Right.
So, yes, aside from the fact that we don't have policies to decide where we invest in, there was no wrongdoing investing in those institutions. The fact that those institutions failed is a separate ballgame.
What was the notion behind the investment in the first place? Because I'm sure that sorry about that. I'm sure that by now.
I don't know. I wasn't here.
Yeah, but that's not a fair answer to give.
I'm telling you honestly that investments have been made.
You have your handing over notes, don't you?
Why would you say that?
Yeah, so 19 million invested. There should be a reason or a notion behind that.
Why do you invest? You invest because you may have some cash you want to use, you haven't used yet. So you decide to invest and get a return on it. And you invested in a valid entity certified by the Bank of Ghana or the Securities and Exchange Commission. How would you know whether the entity was going to go down in a day or two? You would never know. But yes, there was no policy. As we speak today, we now have an investment policy.
Which you have brought up.
Yes. We've got an investment policy approved by the Board of Directors. And so now it is clear where we put our money. It is spelled out clearly in the investment policy. And that was the recommendation from the Auditor General.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that, yes, a human institution, you're on a journey, you may not have, you are not perfect. The Auditor General is supposed to come and check. When they check, they will find things and they will recommend, and you fix it as quickly as possible so that you don't recur.
Are you throwing your hands in despair to say, well, BOC has 19 million, potentially 19 million cedis sitting somewhere in financial institutions that have been closed down, or whatever the status may be, or whatever the system.
We are in court with one of them. The other one, Securities and Exchange Commission, has acknowledged that yes, they're taking over those people. I mean, there is a, how do you call it, the private house people, a receiver.
Right.
So we're going through those processes to collect our monies. But there's one that is back working. We went to court. He promised.
And which of the organizations is this?
Direct savings and loans. He promised he was going to repay. He paid 1 month, 2 months. He's reneged. We've gone back to court to collect the money. So we will collect the money. But the Securities and Exchange Commission, until the government gives money to SEC to pay investors, We can't do anything about it. I mean, maybe we should take the regulators to court.
How much have you retrieved from Direct, for instance?
Direct, I know they agreed to pay 400,000 cedis a month for, I think, 2 years or 3 years. They pay 2 months, almost in total about 1 million cedis, and they reneged on the rest. And so we're going back to court to get the judge to do what he has to do.
How about the others?
2 companies. The other one, company is gone. Security and Exchange Commission has acknowledged the debt, and hopefully they will refund our monies.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. People lost money. People invested in other companies and lost money. Boss is one of them.
What should be done to the officers who were in charge at the time?
If there was a policy and they have flouted the policy, they were guilty of something. But if they did something in the best interest of the company and it went wrong, I don't think it's fair.
The best interest, you say, which means you may be aware of the notion, the reason for which that investment was made.
If there's money available, that you hope to invest somewhere, and that somewhere is a later in the future, you just leave the money in your account. No, you put the money to good use.
Is that the official notion? Because
there was no policy. That's why the auditor said, make sure you put in an investment policy.
At the time the investment was made,
there was no policy.
At the time the investment was made, yes, there was no policy. What was the official reason for which the funds were, of course, placed in these 2 institutions?
I wish I could tell you that. Unfortunately, the guy who did the investment has passed. The late George Oakley is passed. So that's where we are. And that's why the Auditor General said, put in place an investment policy so that going forward, when they come and they even see that you invested with your investment policy and still lost money, they won't flag it. But because there was no investment policy, these things will happen. And I think that, yes, I mean, in treasury management, you turn your money around when the money is idle, so that when you want it, because of inflation, you would have made still get the real value of the money. So I don't think there was, I mean, the people who did the investment, there was no investment policy to hold them to that. You didn't invest in the right place. And also, especially when the Bank of Ghana says that you can invest with these institutions, which is what everybody did. I lost some money too, personally.
So what's unique about this new investment policy that you have?
Yes, I mean, what is unique about it is that we're only going to invest with banks we are currently doing business with. That's it.
But you're not restricting.
And then beyond a certain limit, you need the approval of the board.
So that's all that there is in terms of how unique.
In summary, it shows the various limits, and then it shows where to invest. So once the board approves that we open an account with you, it means that when we have surplus cash in our current account, we can move it into your call account, the call account there, or buy T-bills, or put in a fixed deposit, which is normal treasury business.
Right. So let's talk about the future and the outlook. 2021, of course, you are judged one of the outstanding CEOs here in the country.
We are not there yet.
Yeah, I get it. But obviously, you have a plan of what the future should be looking like for Bost.
We do have a plan.
Where do you want to get to?
So, in terms of plan, by 2024, which we have a 2020 to 2024 strategy. By 2024, we would have reduced our turnaround time from 4 hours, it's currently 1 hour 30 minutes, to less than 60 minutes. In terms of revenue, by 2024, we should be doing north of 3 billion cedis. We are currently en route to 2 billion. So it's possible that by 2023, we'll hit 3 billion. And then 2024, we would have exceeded the target for 20. We'll reach that limit in 2023. So hopefully 2024 will be north of that and have another 3-year rolling strategy. In terms of asset utilization, we would have increased our current asset utilization from 34% to almost 70% minimum. So when we achieve these three elements, we know very well that we've got into a very comfortable place of efficiency where we'll now think about expansion of our assets and also have certain that, depending on the policy direction of the owner of the company, we may be doing other things such as expanding infrastructure or deciding whether we use the excess we have for a particular purpose.
And you might want to catch a full interview at myjoyonline.com and all of our social media handles, Joy News on TV and on YouTube. That's Edwin Provençal, Managing Director for Boss.